The following podcast contains opinions which are intangible and pose no threat to your safety. It also contains spoilers, which are very real and may harm your viewing experience. You've been warned.
Greetings, everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of Artistically Speaking, Poor Artists with Rich Opinions. I'm your host, Barack.
And I'm your host, Dante.
And welcome. So this is a podcast where Dante and I are going to sort of take an artistic look at media of all different forms, probably primarily movies, comics, and the sort, or and the like. We're going to just do a little bit of an analysis of the writing and then the visual aesthetics and sort of come out or just go from there. Basically coming up with an arbitrary and a subjective ruling befitting the nature of art. So it should be pretty good. This is definitely going to suffer from first episode syndrome. So I apologize. We're still trying to find our feet here. Especially as Dante just sits over there quietly.
I mean, you're on a roll right now. I don't want to.
Yeah, I know, right? So the third
you're
take,
like
I'm actually getting
you're like a kid in a tire going down a hill. Like, you got this.
But yeah, thank you so much for joining along with us. It's going to be a pretty neat episode. I'm pretty excited for this one. And Dante just got that. Dante, you gotta help me, buddy. You can't.
Well, I don't know when to. I don't know when to start.
You're my co-host, buddy. You just started jumping in whenever you want.
We got this. Like, we're doing this. This episode, we're doing our first movie. We're doing The Voices.
Yes.
And this is a movie that came out, I believe. What did I say? 2014.
Yeah, 2014, somewhere around there.
It came out in 2014 or around there, and it stars Ryan Reynolds.
Mm-hmm.
It is a dark comedy psychological thriller,
quote unquote comedy, but we'll get into that later.
Hey, it was funny.
So do you want to just get right into it then, and we'll go ahead and start talking about the movie?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, wonderful. All right, so yeah, we're doing the Voices. So The Voices was directed by Marjane Strappy. I think I'm butchering that. And it was written by Michael R. Perry. And the IMDb the IMDb description of this movie is interesting. All right, so I'm gonna give it a read. A likable guy pursues his office crush with the help of his evil talking pets, but things turn sinister when she stands him up for a date. And that's it. That's their plot synopsis for it.
It's not how it happens at all.
I know, it's so inaccurate. Like, I love it. I think I want to often take a look at IMDb plot descriptions and see how like inaccurate they could be. But,
IMDb just written by a kid who like watches the first 10 minutes of the movie and he's like, that's probably it.
He probably didn't even watch the movie. He probably took a look at the back of the DVD case and then like was like, oh yeah, I get it from here.
He read the Spark Notes.
Basically. But so the way this podcast is going to work is we're going to break it up into two parts. We're going to address the story first and the writing aspects from there. And then we're going to go ahead and do the visuals and talk about the aesthetics and the design and all that other junk. So right now we're going to start with the writing. And let's go ahead and start off with how this movie begins, sort of. I don't think we're going to focus too much on actual plot. I mean, we will address the plot, though, for sure. But I don't think we need to like worry about keeping it in line as much. I want to really get into like the technical aspects of it.
Well, there's a lot of there's a lot of like really the plot really consists of a lot of more of the same. Like, something happens, he feels bad, he has a conversation with his pets. Something happens, he feels bad, he has a conversation with his pet. Like that, it's pretty much a rinse and repeat.
Yeah, for sure.
Quite a bit throughout.
But yeah, so it opens up pretty decently, I'd say, as far as establishing the main character goes. We definitely get a sense of who the main character's name is Jerry, and the movie likes to spend a good 5 minutes on him just being awkward as all heck. Like, this is a guy who just stands around and stares blankly, but he also has like a childish demeanor. He seems very happy, I guess is the word I'd use. I'm not quite sure about.
No, yeah, he and they drop subtle hints about it too, but everything is very bright, it's very vibrant, and he's walking around with a big smile on his face, like he's the happiest dude on the planet.
Yeah.
And it's
until he gets to it. Well, that's the thing, right? So like it establishes that this is his. It wants us to see that this is his world, right? Like, it's trying to establish like this is his, like the world that we're seeing is matching his current view. Until he gets home, and then we hear someone be kind of like abusive towards him a little bit. We don't see who they are, but like we get that Scottish voice yelling at him for something.
Is this the bitch you've been fucking?
Yeah, exactly.
I love that voice.
What, you mean Shrek? You love that Shrek is in this movie?
Listen, he comes home, he goes through the door, he gets asked what you're doing in his swamp, and then Smash Mouth plays.
And then and while Smash Mouth plays, you just take a big bite of an onion and call it a day. It starts off kind of giving us what to expect. And I say that not as a positive thing, because this is a very, very slow movie, in my opinion. It was so freaking slow.
And I enjoy it, though. Like, I there was never at any point where, like I felt bored. Like, it was, I really enjoyed it. It was a very entertaining movie. I will give it to you, it starts off very slow.
Yeah, the opening takes a long time to set up what I believe is like a very run-of-the-mill, kind of like storyline, because everything's very obvious, right? Like it's everything we've seen like a million times before. It's, oh, here's this girl that he likes, that he finds pretty, but she's a super bitch. It's like, oh, here's this girl who's equally as awkward as he is and likes him, but he doesn't like her. There's the fat girl that everyone ignores. Like, it sets up these character roles that are cliched out of all heck, and it takes the longest time to set them up.
Because like the bigger girl in The Office reminds me so much of Wanted, the boss Janice.
Oh, yeah.
It reminds me so much of that chick. Just waiting for her to come up behind Jerry with a stapler and tell him his reports due while she clicks the thing 10 times.
It just, to me, like, there was no reason for it to be that slow and to take that much time to set that up. And then when it does get rolling, which is a good 15 minutes, I want to say, into the movie.
Yeah, then Act 2 is.
Well, no, Act 2 takes a while. That's but like, it does start to turn things on its head a little bit, and that's one thing I do like about the writing, is it tries to play with these archetypes a little bit. Like, so for example, we'll take what's her name? Fiona is the main girl. So
yep.
Yeah, so
we made a Shrek joke in the main chick.
I did the main chick's name. I'm telling you, it is Shrek. I kid you not.
This movie is Dark Shrek.
This movie is the darkest Shrek that has ever.
It'll never
Shrek.
be ogre.
Oh my god, that's freaking brilliant. I like this movie now. I think it's amazing. A+. This movie is just Shrek. So anyway, the main character Jerry really he's awkward. He works at this box factory, and then he really likes this girl Fiona, and he tries to ask her out, all awkward like, and she's just too pretty for him, so she ends up ditching him for a karaoke party of some kind. And you see him sort of talking to, it's just him alone in this restaurant that he wanted to take her to, and he's talking to himself, trying to cheer himself up, but it's a little weird. Just a hint of, like, something's not right. Like, he's trying to convince himself to be a better person than he should be, kind of. Which is fine. I mean, we already know coming into this that it's a dark comedy. So we're expecting
well, that was the weird part too. Is like while he's in that I think it was Shishan. While he's in that restaurant, it's the only time that he talks to something that can't talk back, and it doesn't have like one of those voices that he hears all the time. Like his cat will talk back to him, his dog will talk. But like he was making the voice for the fish.
I was gonna reveal it, but you just went right into it, didn't you? So that's the thing.
Well, I gotta. Because I thought it was good.
Okay, so here's the thing: is you find out after this that the voice he talks to in his apartment, the Shrek voice, belongs to his cat. And then he has a different voice for his dog, and they basically are playing out his conscience. And so he talks to animals, but in a hallucinatory way. He does talk. He does have a therapist he's seeing, and we find out that he's supposed to be taking medication. But you can pretty much assume he's ditching it out, which is, again, it was good as far as writing goes, because they set up the fact that he is supposed to be on this medication, which is a factor that plays later. Sort of a Chekhov's gun, but not quite. But we'll get to that later. So anyway, he's talking to these animals, and he's talking to a goldfish in the restaurant, right? But you see, instead of seeing the goldfish talk, you're actually seeing Ryan Reynolds talk. You see this Jerry character talking to himself. And I think that was pretty good, too. It sort of established the fact that this is a schizophrenic person.
There was a lot of weird shit going on in that. There were a lot of... like the way, because you're seeing him sit there and he's just like, you can tell that his mental condition, the more he realizes that Piano's not going to show up, you can tell that it's starting to degrade because the shots start to become weirder and weirder.
Yeah.
Like, because you've got like that Asian Elvis on stage, and then he's talking to the fish, and then it cuts to like quick shots of like some guy doing karate like 2 inches from his face.
Yeah, I don't.
But the way it's shot is so like, it seems darker.
And I think that was a point of trying to establish. I feel like that was trying to establish comedy, right? Like, but that was another point that the comedy failed. Like, we're seeing the dynamic between these shots, and this is a more of a visual thing. But I guess that's the hardest thing about this podcast, right? Like the writing and the visual stuff will blend. But anyway, you see these juxtapositioned scenes where the Fiona's dancing with her friends and having a fun time and doing karaoke at one place while he's all alone, and there's this Japanese Elvis impersonator doing karaoke at his place and stuff like that. And it's trying to set off just like, oh, it's silly, but in the end you just kind of feel bad for the main character. And I feel like they didn't really, as far as writing goes, they didn't really pull that off properly.
I think the writing really shines through towards the middle to the end.
Yeah.
After things start to snowball.
So anyway, so she ditches him to do, Fiona ditches Jerry to do karaoke somewhere else. But, this is what I thought was really interesting, is because, like, their paths end up coming back together. It's raining, her car, what happens? Her car doesn't work or something?
Her car, yeah, so it's downpouring. She gets done with the girls at the karaoke barn, and she goes to drive back to her, or to walk back to her car, sorry. And she gets into her car, and her car won't start. And she can't get it to start.
And then he drives by, right?
Yeah, and then a car drives by, splashes it with water, and then the second car shows up, and it's Jerry.
Yeah, and this is where I do give them, I want to give them credit, because, like I said, she's the archetype of I'm a bitch, I'm prettier, but I'm pretty, but I'm too good for you, kind of, and they bring it back around where it's like, oh well, he comes over and he gives her a ride. And she sort of, like, acknowledges that she was a bitch. And she's like, you know what? Like, hey, I'm drunk. Let's go get some really greasy, dirty food. And, since you're being nice to me and give me a ride, like, yeah, let's just go eat, if that's okay with you. And then, of course, he's all excited about it in a weird Forrest Gump-like way. Like,
okay, Jenna.
He's like steps away from crossing that boundary.
But, he does get really close.
Yeah.
But so while they're driving, things get a little bit creepier because as they're driving, he decides that he wants to flirt with her in probably the most awkward way that I've ever seen anybody flirt with anybody.
Yes, it's absolutely the most awkward.
because she's like, yeah, I might, just earlier it's established that she wants to go back to England because she doesn't like it here anymore. And so in the truck, he's like, so you like heaven better, huh? She goes, what the fuck are you talking about? And he's like, oh, because it's where you're from. But it just, it comes off as awkward as it should. And they decide that they're going to do a little trivia. And he's like, all right, well, there's 4 angels, Gabriel, Michael, and Raphael. He was like, who's the 4th angel? And then they smash into a deer.
Right, and this is where I think the movie takes a turn for the worst, in my opinion. This is where it shows to me that these people do not know how to write a comedy. Because so they smash into a deer while they're driving, and it is one of the most clunkily written scenes ever, or the most clunky. Clunkily isn't a word, whatever.
And the deer pretty much turns into Sigourney Weaver from Alien Resurrection. He's just sitting there all mangled. Kill me.
Kill me, please. Oh yeah, so I'll get into why this is a mess in a second here. Let's just explain the scene. The scene is he hits this deer. He hallucinates that it's just like, just end it. I'm suffering. End it. And he has this knife on him. Don't know where that came from. There we go. That's a good example of Chekhov's gun. He just has a knife. Like, I don't know. Why does he have that knife?
Well, that's brought up later.
No, it's they never established beforehand. Like that's the point of Chekhov's gun, right? It's so that you aren't removed from any what's that called? I can't think of the word now.
Suspension of disbelief.
That's the one. See, Dante, this is why I got you on here.
I'm a smart guy.
So it doesn't remove you from any form of suspension of disbelief. The whole idea is like you're pre-establishing rules almost in a way. So like he just whips out this knife out of nowhere, and this is just this is a normal guy who works at a box store. Like, why does he have that? But anyway, so he pulls out a knife and he just starts slitting the deer's throat. Very bloody, very gory. But it kind of works as far as comedy goes because the deer looks so fake. It looks like it could have looked faker. They should have gone Sam Raimi with it is what they should have done. They should have, what is that? Not Army of Darkness, but Evil Dead 2. Evil Dead 2, where the head is on the wall, the deer head, and it's laughing. Like, they should have gone full out, like, this looks like a puppet. That would have been way funnier, but they didn't. Which is really, like, an overall thing about this movie. I feel like there's a lot of moments where it should have gone more ridiculous than it did. And that explains this scene perfectly. So he slits the deer's throat. The girl is freaked out because then all of a sudden he's just like, Lucifer is the 4th angel, like just saying it out of nowhere.
Yeah, it was Lucifer,
right? Like basically. And so she freaks out. She starts running, and then he runs after her. And he's like, wait. And ultimately, and just the dumbest thing I've ever seen, trips on it. Like he just trips and falls and somehow stabs her. Like, just assuming that that's how knives work and that it would have actually stabbed her, and like for some reason that his hand fell towards his middle so that it could lodge itself into her stomach because, he's running, so his hands should be at his side, but whatever. Like, it's this in writing, right? Comedy and tragedy are like hand in hand. They should go together just fine. In fact, you often can't have one without the other. However, there is a very thin line, though, before you start, like mixing them up. And something can be more tragic that is comedic, or something can be more comedic that is tragic. And I think the boundary there is ridiculousness. Is how, like that's where humor stems from, right? It's the concept of what is more unbelievable, right? When you're a little babu, when you're just a little baby, and you're laughing at fart noises, it's because you can't believe that noise is coming out of a human being.
Fart noises, are you kidding me?
I'm still a baby. I don't know what you're talking about. But like, yeah, that's why you laugh at fart noises, right? It's just because it's your mind is like, wow, that noise, that loud, sloppy noise just came out of a human being, and like that's where a huge element of comedy is. that form of just like, you can't believe, it's unbelievable, it's ridiculous, which is why I think dark humor can work. When you're watching something, even if it is, quote unquote tragic in the sense of the world, because of context and other things, you can still find humor in it. But for this movie, for me personally, I couldn't find, it wasn't comedic enough because it wasn't ridiculous enough. Nothing flowed properly. And this scene is a great example of that. And I'll let Dante, I know you like this movie, so I'll let you say your pace in a second.
No,
but I just want to say, so the movie pulls its punches a lot. Like with the deer trying, like they wanted to look more realistic, despite the fact that it's talking with terrible CGI talking mouth. They wanted you to feel sorry for this character. They want you to like Jerry. That's why he's Ryan Reynolds. Ryan Reynolds is a handsome man. They just want you to like him.
A beautiful little man.
Yeah, he's a beautiful boy. They want you to like him. And they want you to like him so much that they didn't want you to blame him for the death of this woman. And that's where they went wrong. I feel like they should have made it so that, like, made it more ridiculous, and that, yes, like he's so delusional in his schizophrenia that, like, he does these certain things. So instead of him, I accidentally tripped on you and stabbed you and now you're dead, and they could have had it be where, like, he did something where he intentionally killed her, and it would have made it funnier. Okay, so here's my take on this scene. I'm gonna throw you a pitch, Dante. Tell me what you think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So they hit the deer, right?
Mm-hmm.
The deer looks like a Sam Raimi deer. It looks like it's very obviously fake, and it's like it's moving its head. It's like, kill me, boy. And then he kills it, and it's gory, but because of how fake it looks, you can laugh at it. So that's point A. And then, or point B is, he looks over and he sees that the deer, the horn has gone through part of the stomach of the girl. So now you've done what you wanted to do, right? You took off the fact that he's the one, you don't blame him necessarily for the situation. So you still like him, right? Ryan Reynolds is a likable character still. But then But then this is where you flip it. So he's in his delusional head, like, oh no, like, oh, you've been stabbed by this deer antler, like, you're gonna die. And then she does no, I think I'm actually okay. Like, it hurts, but, like, we can pull it out. I'll be fine. Like doing like a Monty Python, I'm not dead yet. Like, oh, no, I'm actually quite okay. And, like, but he's ignoring her. He's in his own world, right? Because he's schizophrenic. So he's sitting there and he's like, oh, like, what do I do? Like, oh, I've got to, like, she's suffering. I have to take away the suffering. And she's like, no, it's actually, I'm quite fine. Like, really? And then he kills her because he thinks he's, like, and that would be fine. To me, that would be a million times funnier because it's so ridiculous. It's something that establishes that, like, what is reality? Like, his reality is not our reality, right? And instead they didn't, instead they went with a way to be like, they wanted to be dark, but at the same time they wanted you to be, to sort of relate. And I feel like that sort of is where they went wrong.
See, I don't know. In terms of how the scene was put together and everything, I think if they would have went with more of a Sam Raimi deer, then they probably it would have been too like the deer is obviously fake, but I think the Sam Raimi deer would be too fake.
Well,
like it would just totally pull you out.
But see, that's my problem with it, is like it doesn't pull me out enough. Like, the whole idea is, like I said, a comedy is, like, you gotta find it ridiculous. Nothing about this was ridiculous. To me, it was, they crashed, and then, he freaked out, and then she ran because she freaked out, and then he accidentally tripped on her. And it's like, where's the punchline? There wasn't one. To me, that's just tragic. That's not comedic.
Oh, and then you have the scene where he's like, oh, I'm sorry, and then he just keeps jabbing her body with the knife.
Yeah, so...
But just repeatedly saying, I'm sorry, and then after he's done, he just smiles.
Yeah, which is... Okay, so that's, like, creepy, right? That's more thriller than it is comedy. Huh. You know what I mean? Like, and because, yeah, so what happens is, like, he falls on her accidentally, and the knife goes into her stomach, and then she starts coughing up blood. She's dead, right? She's dying. He obviously pierced a vital organ. And he wants to put her out of her misery, so he just keeps stabbing her, just repeatedly stabbing her. And then, yeah, he gets up and then he starts smiling because, his brain is fucked up as much as it can be at this point. He comes to this conclusion like, oh, I did good, or whatever. And he's sorry it had to happen because he has that like childlike demeanor, but he's not like, there's no remorse, right? Like you don't see any remorse in it.
Right.
And, which is fine. I feel like the portrayal of that scene sort of shows to me the rest, like why the rest of this movie doesn't work in my opinion, because the rest of the movie I feel like is very much like this. It does that a lot.
That's what I said, where it's like a rinse and repeat throughout.
So he after he kills the cat and dog, so the cat and so he has a cat and a dog, I forget their names, Mr. Whiskers and then something else, but they're clearly like his conscience. You might as well just have an angel and devil on his shoulder. Like one is like, oh, you're a good boy, you're such a good boy, and the other one's like, oh, I'm Shrek, blah. And it's like, like I feel they're basically the way the plot moves forward. It's not even it's really the cat. It's the cat is the reason the plot moves forward because the cat says you do this, and he goes, okay, I'll do that. He always listens to the cat. Which is why these terrible things keep happening, because the cat's obviously the devil, right? Like it's the bad angel. It's his desire, right? It's his hidden sort of agenda that he has, that he wants to do these terrible things and live without remorse. And so the cat is always the one he listens to, and he keeps doing these terrible things. But it's very, like you said, it's very rinse and repeat. And the cat is such a douchebag that I can't laugh at it. I feel bad.
It's just how cats are.
Okay, that's the joke they're going for, though, right? Like, the cat is a terrible person because cats are assholes. This is a known law in the universe, right? When you are born a cat, you're an asshole. That's just the way it is. But the way they portray him, and the way, like, he talks, and the way they keep having Ryan Reynolds' character, Jerry, he's so, like, just childlike that you feel really bad. You just feel bad. When Mr. Whiskers he's just swearing at him and calling him insignificant and all these terrible things. I just feel bad for Jerry because Jerry's like a kid and it's like, this is abusive. This isn't funny. They could have had it a little more ridiculous, right? Like, for example, there is one of the funny scenes is when the cat takes a big fat dookie on his couch, and like he's a little over the top, the angry Shrek. He's over the top, and that's definitely an instance where it's funnier, in my opinion. For the most part, it's not that over the top. It just seems straight up abusive. And it's like, oh, that's not funny. That's just sad.
Well, it's symbolic of his childhood. It's symbolic of his childhood.
I get that, but like, again, this is supposed to be a dark comedy. The dark part, I think they established just fine. It's the comedy part that I think was completely lacking. And so when there is comedic elements, it's when there the video store. When there are comedic elements, to me, it's too much of a tonal shift. The writing can't pick a tone. It doesn't know how to find the sweet borderline between tragedy and comedy. It's either on one side or the other. It builds a wall. So when you do get to the silly moments that I genuinely laughed at, it smacks you in the face. It's like, wait a second, this is a different movie. You get like a tonal whiplash almost. And one of the scenes is, I think a good example is, so he stops okay, so after he kills the girl, he goes back, he gets her body because the cat told him to, and then he ends up like, he cuts her up into pieces, and he does all these things he puts her in like Tupperware and stuff. Just to make sure the cops don't find out. And he keeps her severed head in the fridge. And this is like one of the bigger points. And to me, this is like the start of the second act, is because her head talks to him straight up. Just tells him that, oh, it's okay that you come here. Now I could be with you. It's okay, and it's got she has she comes from Britain, right? The character. Fiona is originally from England, and then she comes over here or wherever they are to work. And so he imagines her with this stereotypical, just straight up Cockney accent, which is pretty funny. Like, hello, governor, all that crap. And she starts talking to him. And after he does that, like after he does this, he sees his therapist again, and she's like, "Listen, you haven't been taking the pills. You need to take those pills. You straight up need to. They're like super important for your life." And so he does. And Dante, what happens?
So this is actually one of my more favorite parts of the movie. So he takes these pills. And he lays down and he sleeps. And then when he wakes up, it's a total shift. Everything looks disgusting. There's blood all over the apartment. Everything, there's like mold growing on a bunch of things. There's like food left out that's growing. And his dog and cat don't make a peep. They don't move. They just sit there, and there's like animal shit all over the apartment, and it's like it goes from like this nice, wonderful, clean place to like this total like disgusting like back alley, just a horrid mess, like a code nightmare. And I genuinely enjoy it, and he winds up making himself throw up so he can get the pills out of his system, and then he dumps the rest of the pills in the sink and just flushes them down the sink.
And then what precedes is, to me, the funniest moment in the movie. And it works so well because of like how it plays off the context. So we were established established the reality of the world finally, right? So we know what's going on. We know everything is trash. Nothing is as good as it looks. You know, his apartment, like you said, there's feces everywhere. The milk is probably spoiled. The rotting head looks like it's rotting, you know, like it should. And he goes to sleep, and then he wakes up, and everything is dandy. He got the pills out of his system. He threw them away. Everything is back to normal. It's all bright and sunshine. You know, he picks up the head and it's like, "Hey, I missed you." And he's like, "Oh, I missed you too." And he kisses it on the forehead. And then he sits it on the counter, which in reality is really disgusting now that I think about it. But like, you know, he's like, "Oh, you smell so good now." He goes to work, and they're all wearing bright colors. The forklifts are like doing like a little dance, almost kind of like almost like a choreographed, like they're all spinning. Yeah, like they're just dancing around, having a good time, and it's over the top. To me, that was as Sam Raimi as it gets. Like it was perfect. You know, they're stacking the boxes perfectly. Like all that was missing from this scene is him breaking out in song. Like it was really good, and it was really funny because we had that. You know, once they established what reality looks like, we were able to see just how far out, how batshit crazy he really is. And it was just a funny scene. And if the whole movie had been like that, I think I would have enjoyed it so much better. Just, it was such a good moment. And we never really see a moment like that again. He ends up falling in love with another good writing aspect. It takes, you know, those archetypical roles, archetypal, I don't know, whatever. It takes those roles that it placed those characters in, and you know, it keeps reverting him. So bitchy girl turned out to be pretty okay. She dies for it, but whatever. And then the girl that loved him, but he was still oblivious to, he actually does. He starts falling for her because she wants to take care of him and stuff, and turns out really nice. But you know, unfortunately, things ensue. This is skipping quite a bit of the movie, but like it's so slow and just so like it just inches along that you really don't like literally like I can go from, oh yeah, he likes this girl, and then he kills this girl, and all that stuff you missed between those points you didn't have to see. Like it really didn't matter.
Well, especially in terms of her, is it's just like it's like couples that like the only real interesting point that happens between them in between is he takes her to his childhood home where he grew up, and you see a little bit of backstory on Jerry where you see that he was abused as a kid. You see that he heard the voices as a kid, and the only thing that talked to him was this sock puppet thing that he had.
Well, I think I don't know if it's he heard the voices as a kid or if he needed the voices, because you find out that his dad was some kind of military man, so they're moving a lot, and he I don't think he had friends.
No, he heard the voice from the sock. They established that in the flashback.
They establish he talks to the sock.
Well, the sock talked back.
It's his voice. Well, first off, this is what they show you, Dante. So it's his voice. He's talking to the sock, but it's because he has no friends. To me, that doesn't say, oh, he's crazy. To me, that says this is something that he created, right? He went insane from loneliness, from being abused. This is less of a, he's probably biologically prone because his mom talks. If we're getting into like the actual psychology of the matter, his mom talks to what she call them, angels, right? Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So she obviously has some form of schizophrenia, I think is what the movie wants to say. But it seems like if it wasn't for his environment, he wouldn't be the way he is. And because of that, we're supposed to feel very sorry for this character. He's like, oh, this poor kid, he has an abusive dad. He has, no friends. So his only friend is a sock puppet, which his dad freaks out on him for and beats him even harder because he talks to the sock puppet. Like it's very tragic. And the movie plays it tragic, which I like. It doesn't try to slip comedy into there. Like this is supposed to be the point where you realize he's a made monster. He's not a born monster. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like he was created. And, it takes that, so like you see that, and because of how nurturing his girlfriend is, which I can't remember her name for the life of me, so I feel bad about that, but because of how nurturing she is, he doesn't kill her. He was thinking about it because the cat wanted to talk him into it, but he doesn't because of how, she's handling the situation of him freaking out about his, they step into the house and he just has these flashbacks. It's a very well-handled scene if it were a different movie. If it were like an actual thriller or even like a competent comedy could pull this off. But because this movie has so many tonal shifts, it to me it seems so weird because I would not expect this scene in a movie where literally 2 scenes ago this guy is talking to a head that's like, hello, governor. It doesn't fit. And it's a very real scene too. It doesn't establish his dad as anything more than what he was, which was abusive. And again, it pulls punches. It really wants us to relate. It wants us to feel how real the situation is, which is fine if the essence of comedy sound like a broken record here. I'm sorry. But
right.
But yeah, it pulls its punches and trying to make it real. And it does. It's a very good scene that hits home. It's like, wow, this poor kid. But then you're supposed to laugh a couple seconds later and nothing about it fits. And then ultimately the girl he's dating really likes him, wants to make him a cake. Shows up to his house with, hey, I want to make you a cake. Ends up seeing the inside of the house through shenanigans. Very clunky shenanigans, I may add. He ends up locking himself out of the house and he has to go up. He tries to get in through the skylight, but she apparently just knows how to break into houses, which is never really explained. And she does, and then she sees the inside. And it's there could have been so many easier ways to get her to see the inside of that house. As far as writing goes, I thought that was very clunky. And then, anyway, but the point is, he needed, the writer wanted a reason for Jerry to kill her, despite the fact that she was nurturing and loving. Which, again, doesn't really make sense to me why you'd want that, but that's what they did. So she sees the inside of his house. She freaks out. He freaks out. He kills her accidentally again pulling punches, right? He throws her on the bed and then her head hits her neck, I think, breaks. Yep. Because she hits the back of the bedpost or whatever. And then he's like, oh no, you're suffering. I have to end your suffering. Which, again, he has another flashback to where that's what he did for his mom. His mom saw these angels or whatever, and they were going to put her in the loony bin. She didn't want to go back to the loony bin or whatever, and she couldn't slit her own wrists, so she had her boy do it for her. which is a total mood killer. And that's my, like, the tonal whiplash is so hard because, like, you know, you can be laughing one moment, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, by the way, this super tragic thing happened, and it's the way they play it is so real, like between the and we'll get to this later, but like just the way the visuals are set up and everything, so he kills her. Cops come in. I forgot. So he kills her, cuts her head off, right? And then the fat girl is like, oh, my friend's missing, goes in, he kills her, which is a little funny. It's a little funny just because of, like, they don't give... So the joke in the movie, which is archetypical and basic, and I don't like that, but, you know, she's the fat girl, everyone ignores her, right? And
right, so they give her no...
Right, they give her no screen time. So in that meta sense of writing, I did chuckle just because it was kind of funny. But I, you know, it is very cliche, but it was pretty funny on their part. And then so fat girl goes missing, and then her coworkers want to find her, like they're looking for her. And then I forget how the movie ends, really. All I know is, like, the cops end up coming in, and because they... Oh, yeah, so...
Yeah, so basically what ends up happening is two of his other coworkers notice that everybody's gone missing, and it's two guys that were established previously in the movie. They go to his house, and one of them gets inside. Jerry is gone because he has gone out and kidnapped his therapist after revealing that he had killed 3 people.
Oh yeah, so she freaked out.
So he's out with his therapist talking with her in a field about how, you know, like, I hear these voices, I can't turn them off, I want you to help me because I'm not, you know, I'm doing extremely bad things because of them, and she reveals to him, you know, you don't have to listen to him. And that's like his big revelation is like, what
Yeah,
like, she's like, yeah, those voices are just your internal thoughts being projected onto something else. She goes, you don't have to listen to those. And that's his big arc. While that's happening, the 2 coworkers get into his apartment, his dog runs out, and the cat hides, and the coworker sees all the horrible shape apartment, the blood everywhere, and he runs out, pukes, and then tells the other guy to call the police.
Yeah, but all of that you just said
it's about 5. It takes place in like a 5-minute span.
No. It doesn't. That's the thing. The puking does, but like. It's literally like a 15, or at least it felt to me like it was like 15 minutes of just meandering. It could have moved so much faster because, like, I get it. The writer, for some reason, wanted this character. This character's killed people, right? So I guess they expected that we as the audience need justification, right? Like, we want justice. This guy, despite the fact that we can relate to him, like, something needs to happen. So he takes his therapist home. He realizes his dog is gone. He freaks out. While he's freaking out, the cops come in. He tries to escape. While he's trying to escape, he breaks a pipe because he also is in a bowling alley that I didn't notice until the scene that he lives in a bowling alley.
It gets established in shots, but like you never pay attention to it.
No, I really didn't notice until this point. And I was like, oh, okay, that's a thing. And then he, so the gas leaks and there's something happens to where it explodes. I forget, like, if it's some spark happens. But anyway, so it lights the gas, explodes, the place catches on fire, and then he dies. Jerry dies in the fire.
Well, he chooses to die in the fire.
Yes, he finally listens. Finally listens to the dog. The dog in his head. The dog and the cat are talking to him, and the cat's like, "Come on, we can escape this. We can go. We can burn stuff." And the dog is like, "No, like, you've done enough to society. Like, it will be okay if you just sit here. You know, it'll be better for them. It'll be better for you. Just stay here." And so that's what he does. For the first time in the movie, basically, he listens to the dog, and then he dies. And then what happens, Dante? How does this movie end?
He goes to heaven, or what I assume is heaven. And he meets up with everybody that he's killed, save for the like 20 SWAT guys that he blew up. And he meets up with everybody he's killed, and he's like, "Oh, hey guys, sorry about that whole murder thing." And they're like, "Ah, it's cool, it's whatever, dude. You know, it's whatever. It's in the past." And then it ends on a musical number, a very whimsical, bright. Everybody's in bright pink and bright blue, and it ends on this super whimsical, super upbeat, happy musical number.
This fucking movie. It's so ridiculous. Like, I was saying, this is what happened, and I totally understand it. The writer was like, "Oh man, so this guy killed a bunch of people, so we need justice, but I want people to like him so much, so let's go ahead and have him die in a way that's like nobody's fault, and then he can just go to heaven and have a good time." Fuck you, man. Don't do that to me. Like, just own up to it. Make him crazy or make him freaking a saint. Like, there's, like, I just, to me, it's just like, I feel like the writer just couldn't own up to the fact that they were creating a terrible person. Right. And it's true, like, yes, this stuff technically isn't his fault because he has this mental disorder, right? Like, he's not mentally healthy.
Well, I think that's why he goes to heaven in the end, is because because you know the animals are very symbolic of good and evil.
Yeah, well, yeah,
and they hammer that home,
devil.
especially when it comes to the end, when you finally see I think Bosco is the dog's name. So it's Bosco and Mr. Whiskers are in heaven, and they're talking to each other, and they're like, you know what? Like, they look at each other, and they're like, you know, you're not so bad. Yeah, you're not so bad either, but this is where we part ways. And they go in opposite directions. So it is very, they hammer it home that it's very symbolic of good and evil. And in the end, he winds up, rather than escaping, he realizes everything that he's done, and he finally chooses, you know, the good over the evil, and it costs him his life.
Okay, I get the quote unquote like symbolism there, but as far as this in the story, it just doesn't work. Like, it's, to me, like, this, it would have been way better if this were just a thriller. If this were just something where we were following this poor person who's going through all these terrible things, and they were killing because they didn't know any better, you know, because their cat told them to. And in the end, like, this is how it comes out, you know, sans the freaking dance number. Like, I feel like that would have been I would have enjoyed that movie so much more. But instead, what I got was like this mishmash of things, where I was only laughing like maybe like 20% of the time, less than that probably. I think I laughed more at the Angry Birds movie than I did this movie. Like, it was just, it didn't. Yeah, it was.
You actually saw the fucking Angry Birds movie?
I did see the Angry Birds movie.
I'm so disappointed in you.
It actually is pretty mediocre. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. But anyway, so I think that's going to do it for the writing segment. Do you want to go ahead and head on over to the visual aesthetic segment?
Yeah.
As you were saying?
No, in terms of visuality, the movie is very, very nice visually. It does the dark tones very, very well. It does the light, super happy tones very, very well. With every time it's supposed to be happy and whimsical, it's always these oversaturated colors. It's always very bright, very vibrant. And in the darker times, it's always incredibly dark. Everything is super dark. There's no saturation. It's all horrific.
I think
looking.
that's the key there too, as far as that goes, because it's not like it's dark as in like pitch black. It's just very muddy, right? It's very unsaturated.
Grungy.
Yes, grungy. That's a good word for it. I feel like this visual segment isn't going to be too much long, or bleh, this visual segment isn't going to be too long, just because I feel like there's more to say about the writing.
Right.
But as far as there are 2 points that I really have to bring up. As one, well, actually 3 points. The pastel colors I really loved. I love the, which I actually just thought about. So when you see his work life, right, it's all very bright. But what are the main colors? The main colors, they're pastel pink and tan and white.
Right.
And it reminds me a lot of pills. And I don't know if they were doing that on purpose or not, but like it has like a very like I don't know, just like very clean cut medical feeling. I don't know why it gave me that, why that resonates with me, and that might just be a me thing.
Maybe you should just stop doing drugs here.
Listen, all right, Dr. Mario prescribed these for me, and I'm gonna take them. But so I thought that was really cool thinking about that. And then the other thing is the terrible CGI mouths. Why were those there? Why did the animals have to have moving mouths? It looked so
that's
bad.
That's cheese.
And it wasn't like comically bad. It was just bad enough to where I was like, okay, that's a thing. You know what I mean? Like, it was just, I was not a fan. I feel like they could have made a better choice there. As far as the cinematography goes, though, I don't know, what's the director's name again? Marjane, I believe. So, not Mary Jane, just Marjane.
Marmalade.
She has a lot of standing shots, and that to me only set in more so that this movie was so slow. I am a huge proponent of show don't tell. I think that is super important for certain mediums, most mediums actually, even in writing. Like, there's an aspect of where you don't want to explain things in dialogue, but more so explain things in a matter that sort of isn't exposition, right?
Right.
Show don't tell, I think, super important. Don't tell me that she's a heroic person. Show me she's a heroic. Like, just have her do things. Let me interpret that from her behavior, right? This movie is like one of the first examples I've ever found of where they do that in the extreme. It is all show. It is almost everything is showing, and it is showing in the most slow, boring concept or like manner that I've ever seen. It was so ridiculous. There are shots, like there's this one shot of Ryan Reynolds talking to his boss, right? The camera doesn't move for a solid 5 minutes. I counted. For 5 minutes, it's just sitting there. And we're just staring at them talk. They're like, it doesn't change angles. It doesn't do anything. And there's a lot of moments where there's not a lot of dynamic shots. And I feel like that attests to why possibly I thought it was as slow as it was. And, I don't need sporadic movement, but something would have been nice. There are real good moments, though, where there's a lot of contrast. Like, for example, when he goes to retrieve Fiona's dead body, right? Oh, did I lose you? You there?
Nope, I'm still here.
I'm just so quiet.
You're on a roll.
But yeah, like, the way the background's all very, if I recall correctly, it's like blue and green. It's all very dark color, or not dark, but like very cool colors. And her dress is white and everything, and it contrasts well with her red lipstick, if I believe correctly. Anyway, but like
there was no blood, there was no wounds.
No, but like because it was so cool, it did feel lifeless in a way, and I thought that was all those cool colors. I mean, not cool like rad, because it was so extreme. No, but because it was so like the cool colors very much gave it this appearance of like, oh yeah, she's dead. Despite the fact that she was like it was lighted up, and I thought that was really cool. And there's quite a few moments like that, and again, like we talked about how dingy the apartment was, right? And the camera angles with that. But then like when the other people see the apartment, they show the same shots, the same boxes of the same fecal matter, and it's like you couldn't really like why'd you have to do that? You already showed that to us. We don't need to see it again. I think they do it like 3 times. Like when Fat Lady sees it or something, and then like, or maybe it's when the girlfriend sees it. I don't know. But
when
like,
the girlfriend sees it,
yeah, like it's the same shots of the same boxes and the same goop, and it's like, come on, like I thought that was pretty lazy there. But overall, I'd say it was pretty okay as far as cinematography goes. Art design, not a lot. I mean, it's a very modern movie, right? It's just people doing things outside of the pastel clothing and everything. Like it's just run of the mill. And I feel like that sums up the way I feel about this movie. It is very run of the mill.
I think I genuinely enjoyed the movie. I think in terms of tone and cinematography, I think aside from the incredibly long sitting shots, which I agree can drag on sometimes, save for that, they for tone and design of it all works really, really well. It helps it works really well to put across the mood. It works really well to put across the difference between reality and then what Jerry sees, and it really helps in terms. I think visually it really helps to kind of make things, because I think without, if it didn't show these things as well as it did, if it didn't set these visuals as nicely as they did, I don't think the movie would have been anywhere nearly as much liked as I do like it. Just because it does have those long-standing shots. It does have things that don't quite look, real or things that look pretty wacky. I think without that good. Without the color palettes that they chose and without the use of tonal shifting, I don't think I would have liked it as much as I did. But I wouldn't say it's a bad movie. I enjoyed it.
No, I'm by no means saying that it's bad. Just personally for me, it fired on a lot of cylinders and it didn't hit any of them. Terrible. As far as it's just. I mean, I've made it pretty clear, but I was expecting one thing, and what I got didn't match my expectation, nor did it meet it at any point. I'll go in and watch a movie and expect one thing, and then I'll get something else, and I'll be like, okay, I can, let me accept this movie for what it is then. And even doing that, this movie just couldn't hit the ball right. Every time it swung, it missed. And when it did hit, it was like a bunt. It wasn't a very strong movie, in my opinion, especially as a quote unquote dark comedy, which it, tries to raise itself as. It, to me, it definitely missed the comedic mark for the most part. And the tonal shift was way too crazy. And normally for movies, I will admit, I do care more about the writing than I do the visual aesthetics. Story to me is a big proponent when I watch movies. When I read movies, watching movies, I definitely care more about the story, I will admit. And to me, this story was so flat that I think it sort of hurt my overall perception of the movie. Because talking about it with you, it's been like a week since we've watched the movie, and sort of let it sink in. And talking about it with you, some of the parts that were good, talking about it with you, I feel like they're, those are really good points. But before this, I really didn't think that highly of them. They were just sort of meh, in my opinion. So I feel like it's just because the writing fell so flat for me that I sort of just checked out for even the good things that this movie did do. Yeah, I think that sort of wraps up my opinion on it. You want to do last thoughts and the score?
Well, yeah. I think in terms of writing, it's definitely not perfect. There are a lot of he's essentially they try to make him out to be a Mary Sue.
Gary Stu.
He's a Gary Stu. He can do no wrong, regardless of how much wrong he's doing.
Yeah, that's the truth.
And so no, there are a lot of dragging on scenes, but that's, in terms of writing, it does kind of fall flat. But that's why you've got me, because you focus more on the writing and I focus more on the visual aspects of something. How much and that was why I made that point too. Was like I agree that the writing is not all there, which is I think why the visuals kind of carried it a little more. But overall, I think I have to reevaluate what I would give this movie.
Yeah.
What do you think?
All right. Well, on a scale of disappointing to a masterpiece, I'm gonna say it's pretty mediocre. In fact, the most lasting thing I got of this was terrible whiplash from all of the tonal shifts. In fact, I have to see a doctor because my neck might be broken. It's pretty bad.
I think on a scale of flaccid to hard, I am at a solid half.
You're just going half chub there.
It's not perfect. It's not an amazing, groundbreaking movie. It's not even. I don't even think it's a great movie. I just think I enjoyed it. It's not like anything super funny or super scary. It kind of hits that middle ground. And that's about all I can give it. It does hit that middle ground. It's not perfect, but I enjoyed watching it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for watching the very first episode of Artistically Speaking. I hope it was at least a little bit entertaining, more so than this movie was for me. Heyo. But Dante, do you want to go ahead and let them know where they can find you?
You can find me on Twitter at retro_goblin.
That it?
Yeah, that's all I got. I don't really use anything else.
Alrighty, and you guys can go ahead and find me on Twitter as Bamzeram, BAMZERAM. You can go ahead and contact us at artisticallyspeakingpod@gmail.com. Feel free to leave a comment as to what kind of movie or comic or video game, whatever media we're going to just do whatever we feel like. So if you want us to check something out, please feel free to let us know. And if you've seen this movie before or decided to check it out because we saw it, let us know what your opinions are on it. Art is a very subjective thing, and I'm sure there's tons of different viewpoints out there, and we'd like to know. So this has been Artistically Speaking with your hosts Bam and Dante. Until next time, never feel guilty about your pleasures.
Thanks again for watching. You can find Artistically Speaking on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at ArtsySpeakPod. That's ArtySySpeakPod. The intro music is They Come From Above from the album Blast Processor by the talented Tony Lays. You can check out and purchase their work at Tony Lays, that's TONILEYS.bandcamp.com. Again, that's TonyLays.bandcamp.com.